Hello everyone, today we are going to be talking about verbs and how to use different verbs in different tenses. We're going to be starting with simple verb tenses, moving on to the use of perfect tenses, and then finishing up by talking about subject-verb agreement. So first, let's talk about just some simple verbs. The reason these are considered simple is because they don't have a helping verb in front of them. Most times you can just understand at what point the verb is referring to, whether that's referring to the past, the present, or the future, and you're able to decide with conjugations how many subjects the verb is actually referring to. So let's talk about the use of some of these simple verbs. The base word of this is rides. So in the past, she rode. In the present, she rides, and in the future, she will ride. For the base word watch, we watched, they watch, and we will watch. And for the word applied or apply, in the past it would be she applied. In the present it would be she applies. And in the future, it would be they will apply. Now, these might seem pretty simple. You can tell that the past is referring to something that's happened versus the future, which is referring to something that will happen one day. But you might be asking yourself, well, how do we explain she is riding her bike to work every day? Or how do we explain she has gone to this place many times? Well, that's where we get into the use of perfect tenses. It might help you to start thinking about sentences kind of like puzzles. If you're not using every single piece in the way that it's meant to be, or you're leaving some pieces out, then your puzzle's not going to make sense. In the same way, when you're building sentences, if you're not applying the correct verb or the correct perfect tenses of verbs to the subject or the amount of subjects that you have in the sentence, then you might be a little confusing. And while it might be easy for us to understand each other in communication, the test is not going to be so simple. You will be asked to match what these tenses are and how to use the verb in a sentence. So first, we're going to go over the different types of perfect tenses. The most popular use of the perfect tense is with the irregular verb to be, which refers to a state of being, and you can use it in front of many different things. So if we're referring to the past, we are going to say had. Now, it doesn't matter if the actual participle, the past participle of the sentence is the plural or the singular. Had will suffice for any of that. I had to go to school, or they had to go to school. See, it doesn't really matter how many subjects are within the sentence. Where it does matter how many subjects are within the sentence is in the present. So if you're referring to yourself or a singular, then you might, or if you're referring to a singular but someone else, you might say she has or he has. He has gone to the park. Or if you're referring to yourself, I have been there before. Now, the reason that this might be a little bit more complicated is because whereas our simple verbs clearly indicate at what point they're occurring, the perfect tense is kind of a way to explain something that's either happened in the past and is ongoing, or to really solidify that something, multiple actions, multiple verbs have occurred in the past and are no longer occurring. So first, let's look at the present perfect. Here's an example of the present perfect. Has lived. She has lived in the same house all her life. Now, the reason that might be a little confusing is that, yes, this is a present perfect referring to something that's currently happening. We can see that by the use of has. However, it has the past tense of the word live, lived. Now, the reason that this works as a perfect present perfect is because not only is it referring to something that's happened in the past, but it's referring to something that is ongoing, something that hasn't stopped yet. Now, the opposite of that would be the past perfect, which is two verbs occurring in the past and the subject has already finished those verbs, those actions. So, had drawn. They had drawn the correct ticket. Now, had being in the past and drawn also occurred in the past. This definitely indicates that there has been an ending to both verbs and that the subject has gone forward with that. So now we're going to talk about just subject-verb agreements. This might seem pretty simple because we're doing this every day. However, it can get a little bit more complicated. Here's an easy example. My two friends likes to make art. Now, what's wrong with that sentence? Exactly. It's the reason that we're using two subjects, my friends, my two friends, but we're using the singular version of likes. That doesn't make sense. We would want to change that sentence to my two friends like to make art. That's so that our verb to like is in the plural, which is also our subject, my two friends. Let's look at a bit more complicated of an answer. So how about there is many reasons to disagree about politics? That sentence sounds pretty correct to me. What's wrong with it? Precisely. The subject of this sentence is reasons, which is plural, multiple reasons, not just one. And the verb of this sentence is. That's incorrect because is, even though it's an irregular verb, might be a little tricky, that's referring to something that is singular. The correct version of this sentence would be, there are many reasons to disagree about politics. Hope that helps.